Hi, Facebook. Hello, everybody. Fortis Therapy and Training page. Nice to see you all. Hope you're all having a reasonable week. I know that from all the conversations I've been having this week, that generally people are finding things are quite tough at the minute. So we're hoping that tonight we can bring you a little bit of, stuff to think about and some ideas and, maybe a bit of fun as well thrown in along the way. Although none of us are drinking wine, so we'll see. We'll see how we go. So Joe's here to manage the chat, so please feel free to say hello, chuck some comments in, talk about how your week's going, any questions that you want to ask Jane as we go through, please feel free to. Jane's open to anything that you want to talk about as we go through this process. So we'll be here about half an hour. So I want to introduce Jane really and say that she is a gift wrapping specialist, which kind of blows my mind, I think, because if you give me anything to do with gift wrap, Jane, I look like some kind of kitten that's kind of lost control. so you're a Lincolnshire last born and bred, aren't you? And you've been in business for 25 years with this particular business. I know, we'll do it really fast. We'll say that really quickly. So can you tell us a bit about what that means? What is your business? What are you doing? What's your specialism?
It's a mixture, actually, Alexis. It's everything from wrapping services, where we can be sort of in the big stores in the high street, wrapping for them, or for private families. We might be doing press launches. I do a lot of training for sort of individuals and brands as well, sort of luxury end of the market. So people like Fortnum's, Dior, Harrods, they're all clients where I'll go in and actually train. I do a lot of filming. I design my own products and sell them online and wholesale, TV and radio, books, DVDs, Zoom events. I mean, anything really to do with gift wrapping, I'm sort of usually in there. So, but it's a dream job. It's a lot of hard work, but I love it.
How did that come about? I'm just kind of curious about that. I know where my business came about, based on my experiences and just what I decided fitted with my values and what I wanted to do. But what about for you? How did that come about?
I was very lucky that as a child I travelled quite a lot with my parents, and I suppose you go off to even to Europe, to somewhere like Brussels or Paris, and you see things beautifully wrapped. And if you rewind back to the mid-90s, we just didn't wrap in this country. You'd go off to New York and things were beautifully presented, and Japan, and then you'd come back here. And I remember going to London for a day trip and thought, I'm actually going to go and do some recce's and just check it out, research. And I came back amazed that 2 stores did gift wrapping, but pretty poorly actually. And I suddenly thought there's a massive gap in the market and I'm going to fill that gap. And my father, who's in the next room, said, Jane, it will never work. And I just said, Dad, watch me, sunshine. So that was really my motivation. And I just didn't have a big dream at all. I just thought, let's give it a go. Let's just advertise locally, and I did. I just stayed within Lincolnshire, ran some workshops at my parents' watermill, and then it sort of grew from there. Really, once I was introduced to Country Living magazine and did some shows for them, and they said, "Would you do the wrapping at our shows?" And did a couple of features in the magazine, and then I started to spread my wings out of Lincolnshire. But it's been an amazing journey, and I never dreamt it would be what it is now.
No, it sounds incredible. And it sounds like even the design work and things you're doing, you're designing your own products and things. Is that something that kind of came about later on as you were doing the business, or was that something you did fairly early?
Yeah, I used everybody else's products at the beginning. It was a new business. I didn't know anything about running a business. I didn't have any qualifications on that. So, with the ribbon side, I noticed another gap in the market probably 15 years ago, where you just couldn't buy small size rolls of ribbon. You could get long sort of rolls that the florists use, but you just couldn't get the 3 or the 5 meter rolls. So, I mean, I just designed about 6 or 7 ribbons and they sold out within weeks. And I thought, crikey, there's another gap to be filled. And that's really how I always worked, is just let's trial something, see how it goes. Brilliant, it works. Let's do more. And now I've probably got 80 ribbons in the range and 20, papers in the gift wrap collection, as well as, all the decorations and double-sided tapes. So, it's just grown, which has been brilliant.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it's also very creative, that if you see I love that. I love doing the kind of trialing and testing and seeing what happens, and is it something that's we're going to roll with or not.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that's something that's really worked for you, just finding those gaps and plugging them with the products that you've chosen to do.
Definitely. And I quite like, going out of my comfort zone. So I know we'll chat about it later, but I now work with a cancer charity. I'm a trustee on the board, and I vowed to them that I will design some wrap which will be sold for their charity. And I'm now pulling my hair out, thinking, what on earth, design-wise, do I do for this particular gift wrap? So, but it's good to be out the comfort zone, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where you get the new ideas and the stretch, isn't it? I guess.
Definitely.
So you mentioned the cancer charity there. So I know that you had a friend who was diagnosed with cancer, and you raised a lot of money very quickly for her, didn't you, in support of her? Can you tell me a bit about that?
It was one of those bizarre moments. It was about 3 years ago, and I sort of live in London as well. And I was out with my girlfriend's Kew Gardens. I remember it vividly. We were drinking the mulled wine. It just seems a million years ago since we did that sort of thing now. And my friend Rebecca said, I've had some bad news, girls. I've got breast cancer. And we were all just sort of stuck in our tracks. And I could see, she was so upset about it. And we carried on walking. And she said, the bit I'm dreading most is losing my hair. And without a whim, I just turned around to her because I'd had a few glue vines anyway. And I said, oh, Bex, don't worry. I'll get my head shaved and we can be bold together. And I woke up the next day and thought, what on earth have I said? I can't go back on my word because this is a big deal for her. And then out of the woodwork, 2 other friends within weeks, within probably 4 weeks, also said, yeah, we've got breast cancer as well. And I got to a point that I was sat in my office in Lincoln and I said, turn around to the girls in the office and I said, girls, do you know what? I'm going to shave my head in 10 days time. We're going to raise money. We've got 10 days to do it. I'm going to launch it on Twitter like now. And I quickly double checked with some clients who I was doing filming projects for. They luckily answered back straight away and said, absolutely no problem. One client said, if you could wear a wig just so it doesn't freak our clients out, that would be appreciated. And I said, yeah, no problem at all. And I did. I just got into that mindset of, I'm going to do it. Let's raise some money. Social media was fantastic. I pulled in all sorts of contacts and people, and it was amazing. We raised over 10 grand. So fantastic.
That is incredible, isn't it? To actually do it in that short space of time as well.
Yeah.
And so you did that for your friend, and actually, I guess that raised a lot of awareness as well as obviously the money that would be helpful as well. And then you've had your own experience as well, haven't you, with cancer? So that must have been subsequent to that then, to what happened with your friend.
So that was probably the year before. And then I was on holiday, gosh, when was it? 2 years ago. Do you ever lose track of time?
Yes, all the time.
Not what day is it? What year are we? And where
I'm always really impressed when people can quote a year or a month. I think, wow.
I know. So 2 years ago, I was in Australia for New Year's Eve for the Sydney fireworks, went to Fiji, flew home, felt very unwell. And I just blamed long flights. We were moving home in Singapore, where I was sort of currently part living. And I got back and just felt very unwell. And it just was very much out of breath. Went to the doctors and the doctor said, you're very, very ill. You need to get to A&E right now. And I was just like, what? It's only a bit of jet lag and, exhaustion. And I'd lost so much blood without realizing that I had to have a sort of a double blood transfusion. And they did the old camera down the throat, whatever you call it. It's something, isn't it? I know people.
Endoscopy. Is that the one?
Thank you. I was never good at biology. And they found a tumour in my stomach. And long and short of it, off I went to Nottingham for a 9-day holiday and had it removed. So I've got a great scar now.
I mean, that is life-changing, isn't it? I mean, it's so fast as well, because I think I was just thinking in terms of, reactions to those, to realising suddenly that you're not realizing you're not well, but then also realizing how serious that is very quickly. And then also the surgery, which happened really quickly. And although that's all really great in terms of treating the cancer, how did that impact on you emotionally? Because that's quite a roller coaster, isn't it?
Yeah, for me, it was, I think the worst bit for me actually was the beginning. When I was in Lincoln Hospital, I had the sort of the camera down the throat. NHS are fantastic, but they are seriously understaffed. I mean, even more so now. So, I came out of that with the folder on my bed, and I actually sort of read the notes and thought, what the heck is a gist? And I had no idea. And, the nurses were too busy. And when I Googled it, cancer came up, and I thought, oh my God, I've got cancer. So I was a bit in shock, and then the surgeon came round and said, "It's so rare, we have to move you to Nottingham." So I think the worst bit for me was actually needing answers, and
Mm.
I was quite frightened. Am I going to survive this? And what's the outcome going to be? And that is when I turned to GIST Cancer UK, the charity, who were amazing, and they just were so lovely. And I'm now a trustee because I wanted to give something back to them. I was so appreciative. But sort of with the surgery bit, I expected it to be keyhole. I thought it would be quite a small operation, in and out. Unfortunately, it grown, it sort of gone to a funny shape. And so I remember waking up and the doctor saying, you've lost quite a bit of your stomach. We had to open you up, and my operation was nearly 5 hours. So my poor
Wow.
husband at the time and my
Oof.
parents were beside themselves. And it was quite a long recovery. But my friends and my family were amazing, and nobody let me down. You always think somebody's going to let me down, and not one person did. And also, people on social media were so sweet and so kind and really meant it. And
Mm.
that doesn't half help a recovery when you're having dark days.
You can't, there's a lot to be said for kindness, isn't there? And just
Absolutely,
people just
absolutely,
sharing that with you as well.
definitely,
So,
definitely.
because when you were talking there about going through that process and not having that information in the first place, because it's difficult when you don't know what you're dealing with, isn't it? I think I know for me personally, limbo is probably one of the most difficult things, because if I don't know what I'm dealing with, I can't deal with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that similar for you?
Definitely. And it's so true that 98% of the things that you worry about never happen, but it's that uncertainty, and you want the facts, and you just don't know what to plan. And am I going to lose my hair? Am I going to survive this? So all those uncertain factors, and it's such a rare cancer anyway. I didn't really sort of know, even with the charity, what was going on.
So how long did it take you to recover from the surgery and the physical side of things?
I would probably say it was a good 6 months. At the beginning, I was sort of bed bound in a wheelchair, couldn't walk. It was major stomach surgery, couldn't drive. Even things like lifting a saucepan was a no go. So things like that, I had to get used to. But I was very much ready for it. I just wanted this thing out. I just looked at it, just get this thing out of me,
Yeah.
because it's going to kill me otherwise. Just, I don't care what you do, just get it out. And before I went in for the op, I treated myself to a whole range of really luxurious yogurts, because I knew that I'd be on a liquid diet for months. And being in the country, you don't have posh delis around the corner, so I just filled up on lovely soups and yogurts, and wonderful ice creams, and that's what I dined on for several months.
It's like almost kind of bringing something in that you actually enjoy through that whole process.
Yeah, and I just think I was very lucky that I moved back with my parents. My mum said, "You are not going back to London with this, you're staying here." So I was told. And it was so lovely to spend.
Never too old to be told what to do by your parents.
Still being told off. So it was lovely to just lounge around in a onesie with my parents, with the fire lit. And friends were fantastic where they came, and they knew not to stay too long because it was very tiring. And I'm one of those people that there are always people worse off than yourself. And you know I got through it, and as hard as it was, and I had to suddenly stop work and lost income, I'm alive today, and that's what matters.
And that's what I was going to ask you about, actually, was that obviously when something like that happens, it's life-changing for you as a person,
Yeah.
but it's also all the other things you're holding, isn't it? In terms of, commitments and your business and everything else. Did you find that relatively easy to kind of say, do you know what, I just need to get this out of me and I need to focus on getting better? How did you manage all of those different responsibilities?
For me, because it was such a long recovery, I had a lot of time where I couldn't do anything. And I read a lot, but also your mind goes into overdrive, where you're quite anxious, you're quite fearful about the future. And I think as well, when you go through something quite life changing, it really makes you question your life and your future, because you
Definitely.
suddenly, it's like a cat's life has been taken away from you, and you think, crikey, hopefully I've got 40 plus years left in my life, but crikey, if I'd have left it much longer, I'd have lost that life. So it really, for me, brought it, the highlight was, am I really happy? Where do I want to go? What do I want for my future? Because the only way you can do your future is really by doing it yourself.
Mm.
And so I asked some really tough questions, and followed those through. So it has been a very challenging couple of years, but I think things will turn out for the best.
Yeah, and I think when you ask yourself those tough questions, you might not like the answers. And I think that's quite often, when life is really busy and you're well, and, you're doing the best you can avoid those questions because you're not even really given the chance to reflect. I think that's probably what we found over COVID and lockdowns and things. We've had more time to think, but they are tough questions, aren't they? And you might not like the answers, things that you would have probably just accepted and just probably done for a long time. You can suddenly start to feel very differently about and make different choices about those things.
Absolutely. And it made me question very much my personal life and where I was. And, I'm not one to have counselling. I normally just think, come on, Jane, battle on, go and knock a wall down, or go and play some tennis and get your frustration out. But I actually had some counselling and was quite surprised at what they managed to pull out of me, and asked some tough questions. And I was really surprised at the answers that I gave. So, it has been a challenge, a very much a challenge. And I think, we're all suffering through COVID, not necessarily suffering, but we're all finding our own inner challenges, whether it be, fear and anxiety. We're all feeling it. So we're all in it together. And, it's just great to talk about things, even if it's your close friends or, your family. It's just good to share.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's actually, like you just said there, you ask some tough questions and then you surprise yourself with the answers, and you're surprised because you hear yourself saying those answers.
Yeah.
You can hold those things in your head for a long time without even really acknowledging them, but saying it out loud and hearing it, you're like, oh, well, I've said it now. I've got to take that on board. And I think that's part of what therapy is about, isn't it? It's that process of that kind of almost feedback loop of hearing yourself say things and then thinking, is that what I really think, or do I want to do something different about that?
Yeah. And also for, my business as well, I, recovered. My team were fantastic. They kept things going. We had like the meetings around at my parents' home, and they were brilliant, just keeping everything ticking over whilst I was absent. And then, I found sort of the beginning of last year, I'd got sort of over the recovery part, and when COVID hit, and then I was really struggling with motivation just to sort of get the spring back in my step. And I normally find that after Christmas, I've had such a busy time with the run up to Christmas that January, February, I'm normally clearing off to sunnier climes and just have a couple of months off to recharge the batteries. And I think, with last year, I didn't do that because of my circumstances, and COVID was obviously just starting to happen. And I just found I couldn't get my mojo back. So, it's really peaks and troughs with life at the moment. That some days are great days, that you're busy and you've got things to do, and then other days you're thinking, is this really happening, and where are we going to be, with all of this?
And there aren't any answers. I mean, we're further on than we were, I guess, but I think one of the things that I've seen probably most recently actually is that because there isn't a kind of plan or an end date, it's back to that limbo, it's back to not knowing. And I think, like you say, we've all got our own challenges, haven't we, within that, but I guess it's what you do to look after yourself during that process. And I suppose I'm curious from your perspective, how do you, because I can see you're a very positive person and you look at the glass half full, and that's your kind of your perspective, isn't it? Your position. Yeah. How do you kind of keep that? How do you keep hold of that?
I mean, I look at it and think, I've got wonderful friends. I've got my health. I'm alive. I'm a happy person anyway. And I suppose I surround myself with very positive people as well, and they're long-standing friends. And people who I'm going to say who probably drain you a little, I will limit my time with them, because I'm trying to like sort of fight my own little battles. And I'll share the love around everybody, but I'm just aware of I've got to look after myself as well. And I think sometimes you're so busy trying to either please other people or be there for them, you actually don't look after yourself. And that's something that I learned through my illness, is actually I do need to look after me a bit more and say no as well. So don't agree to everything. So it's
yeah, because it's easy to say yes. It's sometimes hard to say no, isn't it?
It is. It is.
But there was something else that you were saying. I was just thinking that when you're when you're looking at things from that positive outlook, and you just talked there about people who might drain you, in our kind of, in the psychotherapy kind of world, we talk about kind of drains and mood hoovers, and, you know, people who don't necessarily help you to feel as good as you can. Yeah. And you come away with quite a short space of time feeling quite drained. But I think tracking your energy levels is quite important with self-care, because if you can keep an eye on how you're actually doing, you can then figure out what you need to do in order to feel better, or to keep yourself where you are, or put some more energy back in the pot, whatever that might be.
Yeah, yeah. And the big thing that keeps me going actually is humor. I love humor. And, you know, sort of since the pandemic, setting up WhatsApp groups with, say, school friends from secondary school right through to, you know, work colleagues, da da da. And, you know, we sort of have different levels of humor, and sometimes it's very rude humor. And, you know, I just love funny humor and wind ups. And that's something that kept me going in hospital, and also has kept me going through the pandemic, where you get a really funny clip of something, say on TikTok, and you just titter about it all day. And
Yeah, it just makes you giggle.
it does.
Yeah. Yeah, humor. I think humor and just having some fun. I do think we have to be more I don't know, it's not informal at the minute, is it? You've kind of got to create opportunities for it, whereas you might just have that humor if you bump into someone in your office or down a corridor or family or whatever. You have to actually create it now, I think, make a choice about it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. You know, and it's just everything from like reading to all that. And I mean, at the moment, I'm sort of having so much sleep, which normally I don't have. I'm sort of usually running around, you know, one end of the country to the other, catching aeroplanes and trains. So I'm slightly reflecting on this time, although it's unsettling and uncertain, that I think we will look back one day and go, it was when the world stopped and we took stock on where we were, and it calmed things down. And, you know, people have to cancel things at short notice now. And a lot of people now, I think, are a little bit more understanding and a bit more, you know, they sort of understand and chilled out, if I can call it that.
Yeah, I definitely see. I think there's definitely more empathy. You know we've all got our own set of circumstances, and whatever that looks like, we're all having to manage something. And we were talking before we came on live about, you know, just what you've got around you in terms of animals and people, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's almost like we've all got our own kind of recipe of what's happening around us, and recognizing that that does impact on each of us. And I don't think, looking back, that that's really ever really been considered. It's almost like that empathy and that allowance had kind of gone. We'd kind of lost touch with that. It was almost like you're not delivering on what you said you would, or you haven't turned up, or you haven't done this, you haven't done that, without thinking about the context of somebody. And I really think that's been brought into the forefront in
Yeah,
the past year.
definitely. And one lovely thing that will come out of this is my parents live in a very small village in the middle of Lincolnshire, and I used to sort of come back probably every 2 to 3 weeks, probably spend a night briefly with my parents, be in the office all day, then back to London because I had to go off to do another job. And I never actually met local people. And I've now pretty much met the whole village and go walking with various people. And I've never have had that opportunity. And you sort of think, how blessed are we to live in such a lovely village? And, you know, I know all the dogs' names, and, you know, it's just lovely.
Yeah, and
Really.
it's seeing that, isn't it? It's actually seeing being grateful, because gratitude is a massive thing, isn't it, with our mental health?
Yeah,
Huge.
huge,
Yeah.
huge. And, you know, even just doing the clap for carers, it was something I looked forward to, because you could have a little chat over the fence with Debs or Sonia or whoever. And it's just been lovely, actually. So I think many of us will look back at this pandemic for good reasons as well as bad reasons. I know there's a lot of, you know, bad reasons as well, with sort of socially and economically as well.
Absolutely. So in terms of your kind of factoring in, you know, you talked about kind of thinking about you more and giving yourself more time and looking after yourself more. Are there things that you do that, you know, you think you consciously put in place to keep yourself kind of in this positive place and feeling well, mentally and physically?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely now um, will sleep more. I I just, and also I know this sounds ridiculous. If I'm facing something that I'm really not happy with, or I have a nightmare client, I'll actually turn around and say, "Don't want this. No, I'm not going to do that job." So I'm actually slightly turning some work away, which some people would say at the moment, "Are you mad?" But I think actually for my own well-being, I don't need this nonsense. So, you know, no. We're okay. And sort of, being positive is just, when you've got an issue yourself and you're talking to friends, I always try and sort of get my whatever's on my mind, talk about it, and then bring in a bit of humour before too long. So it's not all serious, me. It's a little bit about, right, enough of that nonsense. I want to talk about you, and I want to talk about your banana bread. That went completely wrong. So, let's also talk about you, because I'm bored about me. So, it's a case of always bringing the other person into it. And, you just don't want to always talk about yourself. You want to sort of share the love and share the party.
Absolutely. And I think given that it's like that, the two-way communication, it's that connection with somebody, isn't it? And actually hearing what they've got to say, and like you say, some of the things that are happening to them, and it is a distraction from how you might be doing that day, or might give you ideas about how to approach your own life. I think there's you learn from each other.
Yeah. And I've been very aware of, I've got married friends, gay friends, single friends, I've got the whole shebang. But I've been very concerned about single friends, because most of them are real social animals. And obviously with the pandemic, they've been stuck indoors. So I did set up a remote pub quiz where it was just for single people on their own only. They couldn't cheat either. And it used
to I'd have so cheated.
Yeah, and then you sort of chat afterwards about, okay, what are you watching on Netflix? And then it was nearly like a book club that got onto all sorts of subjects. So
yeah,
great.
Jo, have you got a question, or have you got some comments in there?
Yes, got loads of comments. Everyone loves you, Jane. Thank you. One question: other than humour, what other coping tools do you tend to use, Jane?
Yoga, absolute brilliant yoga. And I couldn't get onto Wi-Fi when I first came here, middle of the country, no signal. So I went onto Yoga Download and downloaded about 30 videos. So if ever I have anywhere that I have no Wi-Fi, I'll use that. But just good old YouTube, and I do Pilates as well. Definitely walking. So I try and walk 4 to 5 times a week, and that's usually with a girlfriend in the village locally. And we'll go for anything from 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And that's a good chance to not only sort of get some exercise, but actually have a chat with your mate. And also things like reading, jigsaws, listening to podcasts as well. So if I'm on a walk on my own, so you're not thinking, oh, cripes, I've got to do this on my own. Caroline Stanbury, who I know through work circles, she's sort of like a reality TV star. I've been listening to her podcasts, and they are so amusing, and it's, it covers everything.
Yeah.
So loads of little things, but yoga's been fantastic.
One of the people watching us, Lauren, she struggles with sleeping, and asking if anyone's got any sleep tips or routines before bed.
Yeah, I do have trouble sleeping. I mean, last week I probably had sort of 2 or 3 sleepless nights, just sort of anxiety kicking in. But I think we're all different with sleep. And, my thing from, traveling long distances is just don't sleep in the day, try and get into a routine. People sort of say don't be on your mobile phone before bed. I'm terrible at doing that. But if I can't sleep, I just make sure that my bed is warm with a blanket on, or a hot water bottle, and also just a herby tea, and maybe just listen to a podcast or something very relaxing, but turned so you can barely hear it, and that usually helps.
Yeah,
it's very much about you letting your body know and your mind know that you're heading towards sleep. I think that's when we have children, you sleep train, and when we get to be an adult, you kind of just expect that you're going to be able to go to sleep, and actually we need to train ourselves to do that. So all the things you just described there, which work for you, and as you said, for other people it might be something different, it might be, but if people want to have a look at sleep hygiene, that's quite useful, because it's about stripping back some of the things that you might be doing that actually don't help you to go to sleep, that get in the way. And even things like, if you're waking up in the night, write down what's going on in your head, because you tend to what is really, really important and incredibly stressful at 3 a.m, by 8 a.m, it's really not.
So true.
Yeah,
always have a notepad at the side.
Yeah, always write it down. Just get it out of your head, doesn't matter how random. Don't hold it in your head, it's not worth it.
No, it isn't.
With your yoga, Jane, are there any particular people on YouTube that you tend to go to?
Yeah, so, oh gosh, where do I start? Well, Pilates and yoga. So Pilates, I quite like Lottie Murphy. I found her on Instagram, actually. There's eFit30, they're Australian, because I get a bit bored of American commentary, harping on. I want a different commentary. And, yoga, you can do yoga with Adrienne.
She's
oh gosh,
good.
there's all sorts of people. I mean, I do pick a mix. Is it pop? Pop Sugar, they're Californian, I mean, gorgeous babes, but they're very quick. But I've got to be sort of like awake to do that.
Concentrating, focused.
Now that you've said that, I'll make a note and I'll pop all the links on
oh, that'd be brilliant. Thank you.
That'd be amazing, Jane. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then another question. You're so positive, Jane, which is really inspiring. Do you find sometimes that you need to allow yourself to wallow, or does that make you feel worse?
I wouldn't say I wallow. I like to just sometimes go and hide in my cave. I think that's probably only child syndrome, where you just think, yeah, I can deal with it. And when I've had, say, some bad news or something, I just don't really want to speak to people. I just need the gates up and I'll be in my own little space, day or two, and then I'll come out and I'm fine. And usually friends will pick up and say, look, we've not heard from you. Are you okay? And
yeah,
I am okay, but I just like my own space sometime.
And I think it's okay to say that as well. I think sometimes we feel like we shouldn't ask for that. And I know a lot of the time when I'm working with clients who might be struggling, that they actually find it really difficult to say, I just need my own space, even if it's putting it part of the routine, or if it's, just transitioning from work to home or whatever it might be. That I think we sometimes worry about how other people might feel about taking space, but sometimes you just haven't got the capacity for anything else.
Yeah, and I'm aware that a lot of people at Christmas say on their own, they don't want to go to family for Christmas. They actually just want to be alone. And I never used to understand that, but I do now. I think with this pandemic, I just think, I do get it why sometimes people want to be on their own. And I had Christmas this year on my own because I had COVID at Christmas. So I was.
Oh no, did you?
Yes. But it was fine. It was actually okay. It was a bit boring at the end because you were just stuck in four walls. But hey ho, I got through it.
Yeah, come out the other side.
Exactly. I drank lots. I drank through it and binged on Netflix, but it was fine. I was allowed to.
Thank God for Netflix. I think that's probably what most people would say at the minute.
Yeah.
The main topic of conversation seems to be which series are the best ones to get stuck into. That's one of.
I know. Well, I'm very lucky that because I'm living with my parents, my father goes to bed quite early, so Mum and I are usually left and we watch This Evening with a little slow gin on the side, and it's just lovely time with my mum that I wouldn't normally have had.
No, absolutely. You've got to cherish it, haven't you, while you're in that position.
Definitely.
Is there anything else, Jo, from the chat that you want to chuck in, or?
There's just loads of really nice comments. There aren't any more questions or anything, just loads of really nice comments just feeding back from the conversation. So.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Jane. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Jane, there might be things that you might want to comment back to in the chat. Are you okay to pick those up and just respond to people if that's all right?
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
So,
that's
yeah,
great.
Definitely.
Thank you. So thanks ever so much for coming to talk to us. It's been really lovely to meet you, and I think you probably are one of the most positive people I've ever spoken to be honest. Yeah, she did. She was saying she's mega positive, and I was like, okay. And then, but your outlook on life feels really healthy, and it just feels like it's putting things in perspective. I can hear you doing that all the time. Just put it in perspective all the time. So, that obviously is really helpful as well for you.
I think it's always just trying to see both sides all the time, where people ask me to make a decision, and I just think, let's look at it from the other side, and that definitely helps with my positivity. Definitely.
It's always about the context, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks ever so much for coming to join us. Thanks everybody in the chat for the questions and for the comments and things. And as Jane said, she'll pick up with some of those in there when she's got a minute. That would be brilliant. And share some of those links as well. That would be fab.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thanks everybody. Bye.